Hello, this is the Werewolf channel. My name is Louis, I'm the moderator. If you subscribe to the channel and like and comment and all those things, you are in with a chance to win a PlayStation 5. I'm going to take another draw on February the 16th. We already gave one away to Jeff Daniels in October, who seemed to be very happy with it. So please like and subscribe, and you could win a PlayStation 5. Now, let's carry on with stories of Will, our real werewolf. I was driving my new model Land Rover Defender. It was making its way easily down the A9 through the snow. A9's a road in Scotland, for those people who don't know where the A9 is. It's in Scotland. Why did I go on to that level of detail? Because, to be honest, I'm showing off. Especially about the car, it's absolutely awesome. I was heading back to Manchester after a weekend on the slopes. Yeah, I'm a werewolf who likes to snowboard and ski, it's true. It's not just about killing and torture for me. I love to get out into the hills and do a bit of boarding as well. Also, I can become my wolf in the snowy mountains and have some wolf time away from all those prying eyes. Wolf time does not always involve the killing of humans either. The deer population in Scotland is out of control. So not far off the fun pistes are the deer for me to chase. And to be honest, the boot, or what you Americans call the trunk, of my car was now packed with some venison for the freezer. My posit, he was resting in the passenger seat. I know what you're thinking, I really do. You have a big hairy beast on your brand new cream leather. Well, he is a big hairy beast, but he is the soul of the wolf that once was. So he's got no physical nature. Well, he does when we combine to form a physical wolf or werewolf, which I can promise you we will not be doing in this car. That is for sure. He was asking me about the wolves in these mountains. He seemed genuinely upset and shocked that there were not any, and a mite angry that the humans, as he called them, had murdered them all. Humans, as usual, if scared of something, kill it. We'd enjoyed the hunting in the mountains. He'd been kind of confused why he'd not smelled any evidence of packs, and the brutal truth of what had happened brought his thoughts to the murder of the human race. He sat brooding internally for a long time. I, on the other hand, turned the music up and enjoyed the weather and the time with myself as we travelled. Sometimes Fen can be a bit intrusive in my head, so as he sat and scowled and internalised his hate, I just daydreamed without his thoughts being involved. It had been a great weekend in Aviemore. I'd managed to combine some killing of deer and locals with the killing of smooth lines on the piste. Murders were kind of unheard of in Aviemore, but there had been a surprising number of missing persons reported that weekend, and a few more missing people that had not been noticed as missing yet. Can you notice a missing person? That seems to be a bit of an oxymoron to me. You can notice them missing, but you can't notice the missing. I don't know. I've not left much evidence. Well, I've not left much of the bodies, to be honest. Human flesh is so delicious. Nicer than venison, I have to say, and it doesn't taste like pig. When you get the chance, try it. You'll be surprised, honestly. The cheeks are the best bit. Honestly, I don't know why that is. Or maybe I do. Maybe it's all the exercise they get from talking all the fucking time. I was driving back home, enjoying the journey, and did I mention it? My big new Defender, all warm and cosy within my big new Defender's metal shell. The snow was building rapidly, and the 4x4 was being tested a little bit on the slippy roads, but I had the snow tyres on and the full winter package if needed, so this was a fun test. And to be honest, if I got stuck, then I could always become wolfy. That was unstoppable shape, even for this weather. I love this time every year. Whatever happened, I could feel free and alone in the snow. To enjoy this beauty in full for a moment, I pulled over and looked at the fields deep with white powder leading up into the mountains. The mountains were there, and they were my idea of perfect isolation. The perfect view, as I enjoyed a good wee. A wee with a view is such bliss. After the final shakes to drip air dry, I just took a deep breath and visually devoured the sights. I was so happy at this moment that I dropped to all fours, letting my posit fill my body with his power and mind. I morphed into the giant quadruped wolf as the remains of my clothes blew away in the wind. I snarled in approval at the change and at the weather, shaking my thick pelt to dislodge the first of the lying snowflakes. I scratched behind my ear with my hind paw. Only quadrupeds can tell you how awesome that feeling is. It really hits the spot. Briefly, and I mean briefly, I toyed with the idea of leaving the car and going into the mountains to live as a wolf forever. This was my chance to never look back on the human side of my life, to be the beast and be nothing more than the beast for the rest of my time on this crappy planet. I shook my head and came back to myself as I dropped into the services to fill up on fuel and to get the ambrosia of gods, the nectar known as coffee. My only vice, well, not actually my only vice, but the only one that I wanted at this moment. I noticed a small person with a little sign just outside the petrol station, a hitchhiker with a sign for Manchester, of all places. A bizarre destination request for being this far up into the Scottish Highlands. At the pump, I got out of the car to fill the tank. I smell on the air the person, and it intrigued me that the person wrapped in all that warm clothing was actually, oh God, a young female human. She smelled sweetly stale, slightly unwashed and unkept for a few days. She smelt somewhat musty, unclean, yet so very attractive. I could sense that she was in a low mood and frightened and very vulnerable. Oh dear. Perfect. Tonight's main meal and pastime for pleasure had just revealed itself. Oh, how life can be so wonderful at times, bringing me beautiful opportunities like this. After filling the tank, I went into the station to pay the money I owed and wandered out with the most awful coffee. I sipped it, was disgusted by it, and then chucked it at the station's window in a very childish manner. Chucked means throw to you American people. I was not proud of this action, but to be honest, the liquid wasn't coffee, so it wouldn't do it any harm. I smiled as the cashier came to the and wiped the window that had been steamed by the condensation. He showed his face briefly, and I waved as he withdrew slowly to try and pretend that he'd never been there. I smirked and got ready to carry on the journey south to Manchester. As I pulled out the station, I made the impulsive decision to pick up a single young female hitchhiking. This was too good an opportunity to miss, so I didn't. As I drew up just past her, the tyres slightly lost their grip in the snow, and I slid to a halt. The person encumbered with a suitcase on wheels tried to run towards the car. The snow built up as she pulled it through the snow, and it got slower, and she was struggling to get it to the car. She was tiny and weak. Oh dear, a little lost lamb on the road. What could go wrong for her? Well, what could go wrong for her was actually me in this case. I stepped from the car and looked for witnesses. There seemed to be none in evidence. I used my service training to make sure I was far enough away from the petrol station to be no longer on the cameras, and I could not detect any other technology viewing the situation. I could not be 100% sure, but I felt there was very little in the way of observation. I smiled as I walked forward to the young lady. She halted in front of me, and I saw the little face smile from deep in that surrounding little fleecy hood of her parka. "Hi, do you need a lift?" I asked. She stopped and smiled and then nodded. I flashed my teeth and then reached for the suitcase. My hand came up and grabbed the front of her jacket. I lifted her from her feet and threw her bodily away from me. She screamed as she flew. I could hear that she was winded as her head and back impacted on the floor. She now lay mewling in the snow, and if she'd wanted to, she could have drawn a beautiful pattern of a snow angel taking off into the night at the end of the snowy groove she had made with her back. She definitely did not want to create a snow angel at this point. She wanted to run away from the horrible man. She cried out and scrambled to her hands and knees and started screaming for help. I smiled and quickly walked up behind her, grabbing her oversized jacket between the shoulder blades and lifting her from the ground. She screamed again and kicked some more as I turned from the road into the surrounding woodland. I dragged her kicking and screaming deeper into the trees as cover. She protested and then silence. Another daydream. Again I shook my head from my thoughts. The posit was giggling. That was a good one. Killer Fen, he posited into my brain. I laughed with him. It's a definite maybe. Let's see what we find. I pulled up where the hitchhiker had parked herself. She did not move as I got out of the car. I got out of the car and wandered up to her, my hands deep in my cardigan pockets. Yes, I rock a cardigan, and I love it. I looked deep into the hood of the huge khaki parka jacket, and bending over to be at eye level with her, I smiled my wickedly handsome smile. My smile is always a winner, and with it revealed to her, I sensed her relax and melt a little. She offered the handle of the case, which I lifted and carried to the back of the car, pressing the auto open of the 4x4 to get the case into the boot. There's an auto open. This car is so fucking cool. Once the case was in the back, I silently showed her around to the passenger door like a gentleman of yesteryear. As I walked behind her, I took in my posit and became the werewolf. She had not noticed the transformation and started to turn towards me unaware. Her eyes suddenly registered shock as she met mine, her mouth a soundless "oh." I darted forward and bit into her soft and succulent throat. The arteries torn spewed her lifeblood into my mouth as a delicious torrent. I sucked on the sweet ambrosia, imbuing her very spirit through the ingestion of her vital fluid. She struck me. Her blows weakened as her body succumbed to the loss of life. Her struggle ended with a sigh. She fell limp. I dropped the body to the floor and ate. God, another daydream. I shook my head. God, this is just orgasmic. It's just an amazing thing. At this point, I had not said a word to her, actually. She had hesitated for a moment in making a decision. It wouldn't be maybe a life-changing choice at this point. I could sense the indecision in her head, but I could feel she was cold and wet and hungry, and this overcame the worries of getting into this car with this handsome older man. She climbed into the car and thanked me as she took her seat. I walked around to the driver's side, noting if anyone had witnessed the casual kidnapping. No other cars were on the road. The windows of the station were steamed up with condensation. The CCTV cameras were all focused on the station's forecourt, and not as I thought, able to see me take her. No one knew that I had this little morsel. This was too simple. I got in the car and sat down, clunking myself into the seatbelt, and used the windshield wiper to clear the heavy buildup of snow that had already started to mass on the screen. She had unzipped her much too big down jacket and was taking it off with some difficulty. Once free from the coat, she brushed back her tousled red hair with her hand. She then loosened her scarf gently, which was definitely a home knit, and judging by the smell it gave off, it was a recent knit by Granny. I locked the doors from the inside, and she was trapped now. I knew she could not escape. "You fucking stupid child," I shouted at her as I slapped her face back into the chair. "You're now mine to do what I wish with, you fucking idiot." She shook her head and tried to move forward in her seat, her breathing heavy, on the edge of tears. She did not understand what was happening. She reached for the door, scrambling at the handle, crying and weeping. "Please let me go! Please let me go!" "No, you stupid little bitch," I said as I pulled her back into the seat. Again I slapped her face with my open hand. "Shut up and sit still," I yelled. Then she just lost it. She went crazy, screaming and shouting. She was throwing her fit, her hands and feet flailed in every direction. I mean, she seemed to have no concern whether she damaged my interior or not. I reached for my seat and grabbed and crushed her neck in my grip. It was silenced her. stopping her irritating movements and sounds. The pleasure of the silence was now wonderful. Again, I shook my head. This was getting too much. How many joyous daydreams could I have? Jovial violence, pleasuring, stopping irritation. I came back to the real world. I turned and smiled at the unviolated little lady. She was drenched from head to foot in a pair of skinny jeans. She had pink trainers now, not so pink, which were wet and caked in melting snow, which was annoying in my lovely clean car, to be honest. She wore a tight pink knitted jumper that hugged her young, lithe body in all the right places. She stopped moving, and I noticed that she caught me checking her out. I ran my eyes up her little body to meet her eyes. The predator in me was very happy with this lucky find. It was all looking like a delicious evening meal was ahead of me until I got to the face. And that fecking smile. A beautiful smile that hit me like a well-aimed half-brick to the skull. Her lips were full and red from the cold, and they were part open. Her part open mouth revealed like the most perfect white teeth and cute coyness. Her hair was the red of the autumnal woodland. It was a mixed up mess of reds and oranges, and my heart imagined them as the flames engulfing a tinder dry forest. Her hair was very badly styled and badly cut, as though done by her own untrained hands or someone else's. It was tousled and shoulder length on one side and short and uneven on the other. In the traditional sense, her fringe was too thin and broken to be called a fringe. All in all, this mess of a haircut would look awful on many. No, it would look awful on anyone, but on her, for some reason, this just added to her sweetness. It made her obvious in her innocence. She shone, a beacon of delight in the bitterness of the world. Damn! Fen was giggling in the background of my mind. Will and girly in a tree. Kissing. He can be so childish at times. The skin of her face was pale and freckled. Her eyes were as green as the glinting emeralds and full of warmth and life. She was a breathtaking example of a human. I sat there in silence for a moment, staring. I just sat staring. Eventually I nodded at her and went back to preparing to drive, checking my mirrors. I paused for a moment, then checked behind me and pulled out onto the feeder to the A9. She sat in silence for a while. I sensed that she was a little hesitant to speak as she rubbed her hands on her wet jeans. She was very nervous, I could smell it. To create conversation, I took some gum from the side compartment of my door. Do you want some? I asked. Yes, she said. Her accent was the lilting accent of the Highlands, and it thrilled me. She could only get more attractive if she was naked and dipped in chocolate. Obviously not sat on my white leather seats covered in chocolate. That would have been far too messy to deal with. She carefully took the gum and carefully regarded it all over before looking at me. I realised that she was what she was doing, so I laughed and popped the gum into my mouth to show that it wasn't poisoned or drugged or something. She dropped the gum into her mouth and started loudly masticating her own gum when she saw me chew. She was obviously ravenously hungry and overly enjoying this tasty morsel. Why Manchester? I only asked because I was born and brought up there, but that's why I stopped. You intrigued me. I lied. I looked at her, she smiled at me and then looked down with beautiful hooded eyes and comforted herself by stroking her hands over one another. Her body language made it obvious she was attracted to me, but for fuck's sake, she was a little too perfect. I think I would get a sugar rush and a belly cramp from eating this one. Have friends down there? She said, ending with a drawn-out pause, an overdramatic wistful look out of the passenger window while she thought about continuing with the subject. I just need to get away from home. It's just so boring, soul-destroying. I need to go and try to have some experiences in life. She smiled, looking up and shining a mesmerising radiance that raised and settled the beast inside me. Well, this was going to be an interesting adventure. A very interesting adventure. I like this thing. I like it a lot. I'm not sure that I would get bored, but I'm sure that I would get bored soon and eat it. I don't know. We'll see. My posse was doing a lot of internal tutting on a constant monologue in my head. He was in the back of the car now, laid out on the seats relaxing. His gigantic head lolled over the car's middle console where it gently rested his nose on my elbow. There is nothing quite as relaxed as a relaxed posit. You can sense contentment and comfort. What the fuck is going on? He sent me through his thoughts. I sense that we're not going to eat this one. Are you not going to eat it? Are you going to fuck it then? What the fuck are you doing, Fen? I smiled and sent the thought back that I really did not know, but it'll sort itself out in the end. That's part 1 of Girl in the Car. Hope you enjoyed it. Part 2 will be out next week. Have fun. Love you loads. Please subscribe. Please like. Please press the bell. Please comment. Please have a lovely life. Bye.